We are back on Morning Line. Final segment this morning. Clint Kelly, malpractice attorney. Good to have him on as always. Every time he comes on, I learn something from this man. The number 737-7587. We got Brian next up on the horn. If you have a question about a case, call us now. We've got a few minutes left to go. Good morning to you, Brian.
Yes, I was just taking a break from my wheat toast, and I can't believe it's not butter. But listen, the NASCO, the medical industry, I believe, is like number 2 behind tourism now in business-wise in Middle Tennessee.
It's big.
Do the hospitals have their own like staff of lawyers, or does each doctor who gets sued, does he have his own individual lawyer?
That's a good question.
Yeah, who do you go up against?
The doctors typically have their own attorney. They have an insurance company. All the doctors that practice in this state are insured.
Malpractice insurance.
Correct. They have malpractice insurance, but that insurance company hires a group of lawyers to represent them, and the doctor can select which one of those lawyers to represent his interests, because it's not just the insurance money that the doctor has that's at stake, but also the doctor has to approve the settlement. Some cases we tried, Nick, the doctor just didn't approve the settlement. You know, there's a lot of professional pride involved.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. And the hospitals, they typically have their firm, and different hospitals have different firms that represent them in cases, and you know, you may go 5 or 6 years where you see the same lawyer representing the same hospital. So in answer to Brian's question, yes, they have their own staff of attorneys that represent them, doctors and hospitals, but these lawyers work for their own firms.
All right, and you mentioned malpractice insurance, and that's what some of the argument is. I mean, I've heard, you know, people, the public, saying, well, you know, there's so many frivolous lawsuits out there. The doctors have to pay huge premiums for malpractice, which means I have to pay more for my doctor's visit. What do you think of that argument?
Well, of course you do. Otherwise, the doctors don't have any insurance at all. I mean, the last thing you want is to be malpracticed on and be devastated, lose a leg, or be in a wheelchair and find out the doctor has no means to pay the injury. So they have to pay for insurance.
But they're saying the high rate of it. They're saying there's so many frivolous cases that malpractice insurance has, which I guess doesn't really come into play. They're saying because they have to pay so much for that insurance, they're charging me more. If there weren't as many frivolous lawsuits, thus, let's make the laws tougher for patients to sue. I'm saying that's an argument I've heard.
Yeah, it used to be. Nick, when was the last time you read about a medical malpractice case in the newspaper?
I can't. In fact, look, before you come on, I Google searched to find local ones to see maybe I missed something. I can't think of one.
They're practically non-existent now.
Yes.
My business has gone down substantially over the last 10 or 15 years because of the way that they've made the laws. They made it so difficult to sue. And also, I'm more careful about the cases I take, but the answer is that is a bunch of crap when they say that there's doctors paying higher premiums because there's so many frivolous lawsuits. There are so few lawsuits now that are being filed. Actually, their premiums have come down, by the way.
Have they really?
Oh, yeah, for the past few years.
Now that's interesting.
Yeah, major changes. Well, the lawsuits went down 50% when the law changed in 2012.
What was the biggest change in that law?
The requirement that you had to give notice to the doctors, that you also had to have an expert in place by the time you filed the lawsuit.
Oh, and those things are...
They made a difference. A lot of lawyers who were filing lawsuits who probably shouldn't have been because they weren't qualified quit doing it. They got out of the business. And that left people like me and others who have a lot of experience handling these cases. We were the ones that were left, and we were more selective in the cases we took. Well, that caused the caseload to go down substantially. So now the courts have very few malpractice cases to resolve anymore. And other thing too, Nick, they hardly ever go to trial anymore.
Yeah.
Remember I told you I'm settling 60 or 70% of them. So you don't have these big verdicts, these wild verdicts that people used to see. That's why you're not reading it in the newspaper anymore.
But that's true. But the malpractice insurance will cover the settlement, correct?
Correct. And
but it's not the huge,
Right. And remember, Nick, the hospitals, which is more than half of the defendants in my case, they're self-insured. They're corporations. They're owned by, like HCA Health Corporation. It's a huge corporation. LifePoint, which owns hospitals. Community Health Systems, which owns multiple hospitals in Tennessee. These are big corporations. You know, they're on the stock exchange. So they can afford to pay settlements or judgments in the very rare time that it happens.
I was going to say,
it's a tiny portion of what they have to pay.
All right, so you just shot that out. I didn't even know, but that makes sense. The malpractice insurance rates have gone down.
Yes.
Keep that in mind next time someone complains about the high cost
your
of
health
that.
insurance premiums, people that you're paying every day, whether it's Obamacare or employer or whatever, those premiums are not covering malpractice costs.
That's not it.
It's not.
All right, so what would you say to the patient out there? And they can be jurors. Is this hurting patients?
What's that?
The way the law is set up now, that it's so difficult for you to sue?
Well, I believe so, because I think it's harder for patients to get compensated. Remember I told you about the patient who has the $100,000 injury and can't get a lawyer to take the case because they're too expensive. What do we do about those people? And there's a good number of those cases out there. Do they just get, stuck by the curb?
Right.
That's one thing. And then the second thing is, think of what the patients have to go through to get compensated. Anytime you ask for money, you've got to go through hell to get paid. You get questioned, you get probed. Every part of your life is put out on a table and examined and scrutinized carefully to make sure that if there's any weakness in your case or weakness in your background, that will be put up front and used as a discount for the value of your case. You've got to have strong stuff to go through a medical malpractice case because they're defended so vigorously.
Yeah. So my take is that it does make it more difficult. But now most doctors mean well, correct? I mean, and there are a ton of great doctors
out there.
Doctor.
Nick, there's just a tiny percentage of care that turns into malpractice cases, and a tiny percentage of doctors who are sued. It's so minute, but we talk about it because the injuries are so bad when it does go wrong. And in particular with the hospitals, in my view, particularly like with blood clots and other types of injuries, hospitals have not done a good enough job to raise their care. Maybe that's because a lot of them are for profit, but they're not raising their care like they should, considering what we're paying, and we're paying through the nose for health care. Are we not?
Oh, yes. Everyone will agree with you on that. Healthcare is too expensive. See, it's nice to be friends with Clint, because if I get sick, I'm going to call him and say, which hospital should I go to?
Yeah, and I just want people to...
He has ones that he will not go to. And we're not going to talk about it on air, I'm sorry, because I don't want to get sued. But there are hospitals he will not go to.
There are, but I want people to be demanding in the care that they get.
Right.
Stand up for themselves, ask questions, make sure you're getting everything you're entitled to. People, you spend too much money on health care not to get the best.
I agree.
And demand the best for yourself. And don't be a victim of assembly line medicine, because if you are, you may be calling me.
Yeah. Real quick, do you know, have there been any lawsuits filed against doctors who have been just frivolously writing these opioid prescriptions to that degree?
Yeah.
Okay.
There were a bunch of them, and the reason I know this is that I don't know if you know, there's a lot of litigation in West Virginia over these pain management clinics that were just giving this stuff out like candy, and there was no real justifiable basis for giving the medications out, and they strung out a lot of people, addicted them. Some people died from it. That litigation has been spreading across the country. I'm not aware of any cases in Tennessee because I don't handle those cases, but I do know it's become a pretty big problem. And it's not necessarily the doctors. It can be some of these, I call them doc-in-the-box clinics, where there are nurse practitioners that run them, who just scribble out opioids and give them out, and I think the DEA is cracking down on that.
Darn right they are, as they should. They should have a long time ago. Right, listen, as we wrap things up, we have your information about where you are located, your office. We can get that information out. Just remind folks again, a lot of times people won't call in, but they listen, especially when doctors and lawyers come on, because you can be an intimidating bunch. But tell them what they can expect when they call with a possible case.
Yeah, when they call, you're going to get referred to Michelle. Michelle is the person that does 95% of the intakes. She will get a history from you, ask you information about when you were hurt, what your damages are. She will type that up and send it to me. I will then make a decision whether that case meets our firm's criteria, and if it does, I will call you and then schedule an appointment for you to come see me, or I'll see you if you can't get out of your house, and then I'll make a determination whether I can take the case. The key thing, Nick, the call is free and it is confidential. If I decide not to take the case, or you decide not to hire me, no one is ever going to know.
Right. And the bottom line on this, too, is if you don't take a case, you're very good in a letter or otherwise letting them know why. And that's the extra step, as opposed to not taking it. you tell them, which is good of you. I mean, at least you explain why.
Yeah, I'm going to put in there what the basis is for me not being able to take the case, so at least the patient understands. Sometimes these patients will call lawyers, and the lawyers won't give them a straight answer. They'll say, oh, I've got a conflict, or oh, I can't take your case because I got too many cases, and the patient doesn't have any idea why their case isn't being handled. I will tell the patient in writing why it is that patient doesn't have a case, so at least they get an answer. Because a lot of times, Nick, these people just want answers.
Exactly. That is very good of you, and not all lawyers do, because especially with something like medical. I mean, I think that's important.
That's what I do for the public for free, is I will give them an answer, and it will not cost them anything if I turn down the case.
Gotcha. Last thing, if you walk away from this show remembering, statute of limitations. 1 year, folks. 1 year.
Remember Janice.
Yeah, remember our first call of the morning. And she may have had a case, but unfortunately she didn't know, and the time has passed. I don't care how badly injured you've been. If it's outside that 1 year, except in very rare circumstances, you cannot sue.
Correct.
Keep that in mind. Clint, as always, a pleasure. It's good having you on. It's nice to see you.
Yeah.
He's a good guy. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll have the contact information, including for some of our callers that need to contact Clint right after this. Stay with us.